There they are, right there. Now, the reason I asked them to stand is that they are the two members here from the very first class 50 years ago, and they can still stand.
What a personal pleasure it is for me to see so many familiar faces back at Stanford, all looking so well and all looking so much at home back on the campus.
Another change from the very early days is that our program is much more international, much more global. For example, the current class right now, about 60% come from outside the U.S. They come from 18 different countries, and this is a pretty typical makeup in recent years. We have a very diverse and interesting group of students.
In 1983, I was a 22-year-old management trainee at a telecommunications company right at the divestiture of the Bell system. And I met someone who was a Sloan Fellow. This one happened to be from MIT. But I heard about the program at both MIT and Stanford, and I made up my mind at 22 that this is what I wanted to do. So all I needed to do was become a high-potential, mid-level manager, be the one person selected by my company of 60,000 people, and then get accepted by Stanford, right? Well, 12 years later, after pestering every boss I ever had and working my way up the corporation, I was finally accepted to go to the Sloan program. And as Bob and George said yesterday, the goal of the Sloan program is to change your life. And I can tell you, it absolutely did it for me.
What, from each one of you, do you consider the greatest barrier in the future that you're going to have to overcome to continue this great process that's going on in each one of your countries?
I think the consumer economy is getting to these countries, to the emerging markets, and this is a process that should be, it's tough to control, but it should be going on a smooth way. Every year, people should think that the next year they're going to be better off, and I think for me this is very important.
Well, my answer would be send more Bulgarians to the Sloan program. We definitely need them.
I walked in here this morning, and I had this feeling. It was like I almost suddenly got hit with electricity. And I felt it. I hope you felt it as well. It's quite amazing, this team that's here today. Because the amount of talent, the amount of inspiration, the amount of wonderful people that are here is truly amazing. And I could feel the energy when I walked into this room. And I think that says a heck of a lot for Sloan people and Stanford people.
It's kind of interesting. I spent the last 6 years being the CEO of a very capital-intensive company, and I have to tell you, it's incredibly refreshing to be able to get up, give a presentation, and not have to ask for money. One of the things I tell the students is that entrepreneurship is not an event. It's a process. Fiber Tower came out of 2 Sloans and 2 MBAs out of the class of 2000. The 4 of us had worked together over the year and really had a passion to try and do something that we could be proud of, that we could be excited about. And the problem was we didn't have a great idea. So what we decided to do was to come together for 6 months in a search process where we would do a deep dive into a couple of industries, one of which was actually wireless. And the interesting part is, after going through that deep dive, many of us had technical backgrounds, the challenge wasn't finding a great idea. The challenge was picking from the multiple things that we found and having the discipline and the conviction to actually commit ourselves to one of those ideas.
30 years ago, I was working at the British Treasury. I was the principal private secretary, or the chief of staff, to the head of the department, a brilliant man, Lord Crowham. I was in my late 20s, a bright young thing. Some things have changed. Dennis Healey, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, was at Heathrow, about to board a plane for Washington. And he received a phone call telling him he could not leave the country. The Bank of England had run out of money. Inflation was at 30%. Unemployment was at 12%, and the pound was in free fall, and the official reserves of the country had been exhausted. The IMF duly arrived. We were bailed out under the most stringent conditions. This is 1976. It's hard to believe. The government failed as soon as those taxes were increased and the spending was cut. The political consensus fractured. The miners went on strike. There was a prolonged period of social unrest. And a passionate advocate of competition, markets, and personal freedom came to power, the Blessed Margaret. I cannot describe for you the shock and disorientation of the erudite elite for whom politics was the art of the possible, not the pursuit of the future. I will simply say that I learned once and for all, and I carried this lesson into business, that you'd better understand the environment within which you operate. And to do that, you have to get out of the bubble. And no group of people, no company, no department, no university has a lock on information or insight. And the more you get out there and challenge yourself and engage the external world, the better it seems to me you and your company are likely to do. I believe great companies can only be formed and created, can only grow and succeed if they take risk. And I think great leaders have to take risk. And the risk means you don't know what's going to happen. But in the world we live, you cannot play steward. You cannot preside. You need a point of view.
Now, in all deference to the classes of 2007, 2008, 2005, 1977, and 1963, there seemed to have been a gross oversight in the failure to mention the class of 1975. And I bring this up for George Parker and yourself, Bob, because we were told personally by some of you people we were the greatest class ever.
What does the Sloan program need to do to stay relevant?
I think you just read the new MBA curriculum. And I think it's a profound change. I think it'd be compliment on it. I think the entrepreneurial capacity of Stanford is recognized and is highly relevant to the modern world. But I think this profound shift to globalization, Bob, which has been talked about a lot, is also critical. But I really think you've just done it with the new program.
Well, and of course, we got most of that from the Sloan program.
I left Stanford a little over 2 years ago, but it seems like it was just yesterday I was standing in Sally Pierce's office in a dazed stupor, mindlessly shoveling M&Ms into my mouth, trying to comfort myself because I had just endured one of Pete DiMarzo's sadistic finance exams. As I moved from the military into business, I needed to go somewhere to acquire a new skill set. And Sloan was just the place. Came to Sloan to get down to the business of learning business. And while I was here, I had the great fortune of meeting some fantastic professors like Bob Flanagan, who teaches economics, Ron Kaznick, who taught accounting and taught me more of the nuances of FIFO and LIFO accounting than any one human being possibly need in one lifetime. I get to class that same day, sit down, and I meet my 53 classmates, and I was struck by the rich diversity of the students. They represented 17 or so different countries. Most of them were bi or trilingual. Lots of different experiences, lots of different backgrounds.
It's 10 years out from our class of 97, which was and is the best class ever. And I've been threatened by one of them. If there's any consultant speak, they're throwing tomatoes at me. So, I still often think I was the admissions mistake, and I thank Hal for taking the risk and allowing me in, and Kirk for not throwing me out once he found out about me. I had a chance to chat with John yesterday because I had no idea what I wanted to say, and he said, what I'd like you to do is talk about how you go from growing up in the bush in northern Saskatchewan and not finishing high school and no undergrad to raising money on Wall Street from Goldman and Barclays and making the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And, I think there's two answers to how you do that. The first is you have to be incredibly lucky. You have to have amazing mentors and people in your life. And I've been so fortunate in that. And I look out here and I see many of them, including Michael Bush from the class of 94 and Niall Amley-Wolf from the class of 2007, who are Sloans that I have the great fortune to work with in this venture. The other thing I think you need is, I don't know about that GMAT score thing, but you have to not be smart enough to know that you can't do things, because I remember quite vividly in 1994 I was dating a girl from New York, and I told her that I decided I wanted to go to business school and get an MBA, and she said, "That's great. Where are you going to do your undergrad?" And I said, "I'm not, and I'm either going to go to Harvard or Stanford." She said, "You've got grade 11. You've got no undergrad. There's no way. You can't, be serious." I said, No, that's what I'm going to do. And I think if there's one thing, I was fortunate enough. You asked me to talk about DNA. I grew up in the bush, northern Saskatchewan. One of the ways to visualize it is when I was growing up, there was one farm north of our house, and then it was bush and tundra all the way to the North Pole. The furthest north, east-west road, was just south of my house. We didn't have a lot of experts to go to. I mean, you looked around and if you had a problem, you better figure out how to solve it. And the only reason I'm getting a chance to do that and work with such great people is because the Sloan program and the legacy that all of you have created and been part of. Thank you.
So, how did a Sloan get to be an author? Well, partly nurture. Numerous relations on both sides of my family in various professions had written books. So I guess I grew up thinking that writing a book wasn't a particularly strange thing to do. But mainly, I think it's DNA. My grandmother, a prolific, popular novelist. This is the Rutherford side of the family. Her family, the Rutherfords, were twice related to Sir Walter Scott. Above all, 4 generations, Rutherfords had always married their cousins. So, I would have to say to any of you contemplating a creative career that, while not an absolute prerequisite, inbreeding does help. And you should speak to your ancestors as a matter of urgency. There is no question. It was the Sloan program that turned me into a novelist. John, I'm so sorry. But for all of us, I would suggest, the Sloan program is also a time of personal reevaluation. That's a part of its value. And there are 5 things I will mention which were important for me in the Sloan program. One, and all my colleagues have said the same, the confidence it gives you, the widening of horizons, the new perspectives, the intellectual framework and skill set, the California blue sky that tells you that all things are possible. For all of these gifts changed our lives. This gift of confidence also is accompanied by the gift of objectivity. If you are in any creative endeavor, certainly if you're a writer, you are very personally exposed. So many, perhaps even of you, have tried a bit of writing, found that your first, second, third drafts weren't so hot, and thought to yourself, well, okay, I don't have what it takes to be a writer. But there is, for any Sloan, another question, which is, so how can I just make this product better? Case studies. I love case studies. The only trouble was every time I was doing a case study, I kept thinking, I wonder if this guy had a wife and kids and, God, I could make a story out of this. And
well, probably the most important life event that determined my life actually didn't have anything to do with me. My father, born in Cambridge in August 25th, 1911. My parents are British. His mother, my grandmother, decided to bring him to America in the spring of 1912. So she booked passage, and on the appointed day took the train from Southampton down to King's Cross, and there was some engineering works or something that delayed things. So they got to the quay out there at Southampton, and by 15 minutes had missed the Titanic. That was probably my most fortunate stroke of luck.
I found out about 3 days before the exam that the accounting department had decided to give to the Sloan Fellows the exact same exam that they had contrived for all 5 sections of the MBA. And I realized that the moment of truth was at hand. And so, if you think you were anxious, I was anxious for 3 or 4 nights, several sleepless nights. The day of the exam, I came into my office. I sat in my office and I waited for the full 2 hours of that first accounting midterm. And sure enough, at the end of the exam, a stream of Sloan Fellows began to arrive at my office throughout the course of the day. And the dialogue was something like, "Oh my God, that was an awful exam. Oh my God, that was the hardest exam I've ever taken. Oh my God, I failed that exam. Are you going to send my grades to my corporate sponsor?" Well, I tried to reassure them, but the truth was I was suffering the same anxiety. And we had to wait 3 days, and I heard that the exam's results were going to be posted, and I raced downstairs just as these results were being posted. And I approached the list, and I have to tell you, my heart sunk. I saw that at the bottom of the list was the Sloan class. And I approached it, and I looked at the data, and I said, here are the average grades for each of the sections. And boy, each of the 5 sections of the MBAs was really high. But I got down to the bottom right-hand corner of the page, and across from the Sloan class was the highest score of the entire Graduate School of Business. I was elated. I went between classes. I jumped down into the hallways. I found faculty. I grabbed them by the collar. I said, "Did you hear about the Sloan Fellows? Did you hear about the Sloan Fellows?" I was in the faculty lounge 3 times a day making sure that every faculty member knew that the Sloan Fellows had outperformed the MBAs on the toughest exam of the year. There is no program in the Graduate School of Business that generates stronger bonds of friendship than that which the Sloan program creates.
You ready? Okay. It's a toast to continuing success, however you define it, to ongoing learning, and to enduring Sloan friendships for each of you. Many thanks. I love seeing all of you. Many thanks. Toast.
I consider myself, as the other directors do, extraordinarily fortunate to have been a part of the Sloan family, and I thank you very much.
Oscar Wilde remarked that success is a science. If you have the conditions, you get the result. Sloan Fellows come into the program as individuals with a remarkable range of experience and abilities. However, what I think distinguishes the program is that these individuals very quickly come together as a united group, determined to ensure that the Sloan year is an extraordinary beneficial experience for everyone. It's this spirit of working together and helping each other which distinguishes the program and provides the basis for its success. I want to say congratulations to all Sloan Fellows, from the class of 58, 59 and 60 here to the class of 2007 and soon to be 2008. And let us all wish the Sloan program another 50 years of success. Thank you.